feature presentation.
Hey,
Levan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I
of course.
really
My
appreciate it.
pleasure.
I know that you are super busy, so I wanted to ask you specifically, every new experience that I think anybody has changes us in some way or another, and it gives us greater insights into who we are. And with a movie like And Then We Dance, was there anything in that experience that helped to inform you and how you approached research or the making of Crossing?
Yeah, I think those movies exist sort of because of each other in a sense that when And Then We Dance came out, it was received, by huge riots and all of the things that went down when we tried to screen that film in Georgia. And there was sort of this narrative happening where it was like, it's the post-Soviet generation versus the Soviet generation, and they see things very differently. And it was like a very polarizing kind of debate. And I felt like it's not that black and white, and that very much made me want to make this film and make a film from the perspective of, like an older person who has somebody around them that is LGBTQI plus, and sort of what you make. So, so it was very much a response to trying to sort of talk about that debate and like bridging that gap. This film.
Is there any concern about how Crossing will be met in Georgia, given how the response was to And Then We Danced?
I mean, the thing with this film, in contrast to And Then We Dance, is that it doesn't, like, in the view of like conservative people, I guess, attack tradition in the same way, because it's not set in like a dance world, like like And Then We Dance was about Georgia and that. So, but I think just because my name is now associated with it and with like controversy, I think this sort of very, I mean, and I want to say that they're a marginal group in Georgia, but they have a very loud voice, like is often the case with these conservative people or like far right extremists. But I think they, will try to use the film as sort of a political tool, probably. But I think hopefully it will go better.
Absolutely. And it's such a beautiful movie. You mentioned the generational aspect of it. Was that an important aspect in finding the balance between two of your lead characters and sort of seeing their perspectives in a non-judgmental way?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that there is like a conversation happening between them, and I think they're both. I mean, all three characters are sort of navigating patriarchy and sort of, with everything that that entails. And I feel like, Achi is a character, the younger boy in the film, who sort of really desperately wants to escape something to him that's very toxic. And I don't think he has the words to understand exactly what it is. And I think that's something that myself is very personal to me. I still can find myself in similar environments because that's sort of the how do you say in English, hegemony, like that's the norm in a way in many places and spaces. I think that's interesting thematically to explore, and I explore that also with Evdim, who navigates that too, but she does it with great resilience and almost, like a effervescent positivity in trying to sort of claim her space in this very masculine world that she
Do you
inhabits.
do you see yourself in these characters, and does it give you a greater insight into yourself as a person?
Well, I don't know if it gives me a greater insight into myself, but it's definitely a conversation that I'm having with myself and that I have a lot with me and the audience, and something that I've thought about a lot, and also myself maybe couldn't put into words when I was growing up. But a lot of the themes that I explore in everything that I've done is about people that are kind of outsiders, and that's also in both in fiction, like in film and books and everything. It's something that I've always been drawn to.
I was curious if you saw yourself as a documentary filmmaker and exploring that medium, because there's this hybrid quality to the movie. And also, could you talk a little bit about your collaboration with Pink Life and how they inform the narrative in any way and when they were brought into the narrative?
Sure. I mean, I think that for me, I'm very curious and I love exploring things, and I want the process of filmmaking for me to be valuable also as a learning experience, and not just, a job. So to me, the whole process of making a film and also working on the film and filming and with everybody involved in my films, I want it to be like sort of enriching, so that it feels like time well spent. So this sort of like cinema verite aspect of my films, I think, is very much because of that, because I love inhabiting these spaces, and I want to share those spaces with an audience. So a lot of the things that you see in Crossing, especially everything that's in Istanbul, are things that I experienced while being there and talking to people, and Pink Life was a very big part of that. They were the first organization, Pink Life, and another organization that's doing amazing work called Red Umbrella, who they're in Ankara. I spoke extensively with them, and then I also worked very closely with people from the community, and we also had people from the community in the team working behind the camera. So it was very, for me, this film has been a great journey in many ways, of sort of understanding and appreciating and getting a whole different sense of a lot of things that I explore in the film.
You mentioned space. Is that something that helps to, in a way, express how a character is feeling without just simply giving exposition, even in the way that a character moves within that space?
100%. I mean, I think that the way a character or a person inhabits, I mean, the space around you sort of dictates who you become a lot. And I feel like in both Enemies and in Crossing, I think that's very evident. And Istanbul is a place where the city really forms you as a person and how you navigate the city. But also, I want very much the camera in my films to feel like a third person or like a spectator, an observer that, sometimes sits at a distance, maybe with a cigarette, looking at these people. Sometimes it meanders off into another direction, starts living its own, and I love that sense of exploration that I want to convey, or I hope that it conveys in my films. That's what I want to do.
Absolutely. There's one scene I have to ask you about before I wrap up with you,
Sure.
and it's an incredible sequence. I watched it about like four times, is the ferry sequence.
Oh
I
yeah.
love the way that you mentioned how like the camera moves and it becomes a part of the story and feels like a third or fourth character. But I wanted to ask you, like, how did you approach a scene like that? Because it feels so natural in terms of it being a single take, but then also narratively handing it off to the third character who we're introduced to in that sort of 24-25 minute mark of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because, like, and then dance is a very classical structure in narratively, and then crossing is maybe put more like a little more free form and a little more like, takes its own path. And that's very much what I wanted to do with this film from the beginning. And in many ways, I wanted to make it maybe even more, more free style. But in this sort of film economy that we're in, you have to write a script in order to entice financiers, and they have to be like sort of entertained. And I think that the entertainment aspect sometimes is what I feel a little frustrated with, because I know myself that like this is going to be interesting. Trust me, just let me do my thing, and I'm going to give you something fun or whatever you want to call it. Um, so I think that um, fairy sequence or introducing a character later, whatever, were choices that I made because again, like you know, I as a viewer or I as a filmmaker think of myself as a viewer too, and what I would be fascinated by, and I just really wanted to tell the story in that way, and I'm glad I was able to do it. And then there's new characters being introduced there too, because you have those two kids that are introduced
Yes.
even before Ebrim. So yeah, I think I hope to further explore that sort of format in the future.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk about that, because even just thinking about like the sound design and how, water at the beginning in the opening credits to, the water in that moment, it's
Yeah,
it's so beautifully composed, and even just
thank you.
simple expressions like, the way that a character will defy someone else by taking a shot after, they've had the moment, or, just putting lipstick on in a mirror and having solidarity with somebody else and looking
Yeah.
at them and just having those little moments, like those details give you so much without having to actually, deliver dialogue, and you get so much out of it. So I really appreciate you taking the
Thank you
time
so
to do
much.
this.
That's so kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.